The Centurion Project. Written by the 8th Day of Night. Chapter 55. The March. Section 3, Part 2. He let out a small sigh, and picked out a stump that wouldn't cause him to bend his knees too much. He took a seat, and Luna moved herself and sat just before him, staring up into his eyes. Elias chewed silently on his cheek, waiting for her to flip, waiting for her anger to lash out at him. Perhaps a belittling comment or two, something about how wrong he was, how what he did was murder, how he was some wild.
General, what are your current thoughts on Dr. Scalpel?
Or she was going to ask about something completely different. Elias frowned as he truly met the Alicorn's gaze. I thought this would be about today's events. Luna shrugged.
There is nothing to be said, Elias, and I'm not going to yell at you like you're a child. You knew what you were doing, and you know why you did it. If you feel guilty about it, nothing I will say will make that guilt better or worse. And while I am extremely disappointed in that particular action of yours...
Her eyes flashed for a moment with irritation, but immediately cooled.
I can move past it, because I know you won't do it again.
And your sister? Elias said. She seemed quick to jump on my back in the past over smaller slights, and pains she had no business being part of. But now when an enemy of Equestria actually threatens you...
My sister is tired,
Luna interrupted.
as are we all. The gathering of our magic makes us slow and weak, not just in body, but in mind as well. Being the most powerful, Celestia is a touch more affected than usual. It is why she defers judgment to others whenever possible for now.
He smiled.
My niece is plagued by indecision, and she relies heavily on Celestia's opinion. I am the middle ground, and as I said, I trust you, because I know you won't repeat today's actions.
And how do you know that? Elias challenged. Luna smiled sweetly, but her tone was anything but.
I am your friend, Elias, and I want us to be more still, but don't test me. If I have to choose between you and an innocent life, I will choose that life, because I know that the man I love wouldn't ever dare take a life that didn't deserve it. If you murder an innocent, which I don't believe you have yet, I will cut you down where you stand, because I love you so dearly.
Elias started and smiled faintly. That's actually far more comforting than you would believe, Princess. He drooped slightly. But I've taken innocent lives before. Luna's smile took on a more genuine light, and she placed a hoof on his knee.
I know, General, but not here, right?
No, not here, Elias answered. Luna rubbed his knee.
Precisely. I will make sure that day never comes, one way or another. I will make sure you never blacken your soul.
She retracted the hoof and straightened.
But that is why I will not comment on today's events. Chief Bearhide was a warrior, and I agree with your conclusions you drew concerning him. While I find it disconcerting that you killed him while he was unarmed and unthreatening, I will let it pass, only because he would have killed ponies in time. His life was forfeit when he decided to fight us. He knew that, as do I.
She let out a sigh.
Dr. Scalpel, on the other hoof, truly believed that you would ignore his deception. I wanted to know your thoughts on the situation.
Elias put on an impassive mask as he quelled a bit of eternal fury. So you've spoken with him. I'm sure he told you all about the part where I slapped him.
No, actually, I saw that part,
Luna said. Her smile vanished but was replaced by an equally impassive mask.
I cannot express my support for that action either, understandable though it may be. I just wanted to know what you were thinking, what you are currently feeling, and your thoughts on what the future may be.
Elias toyed with 3 parts of the question, then decided to answer it piecemeal and in order. I felt angry, and betrayed that one of my closest friends stabbed me in the back with lies and deceit. I currently feel that I was justified, and that Dr. Scalpel received a just punishment, especially given that he didn't accept the simple verbal dismissal. If he didn't want to get struck, he should have just accepted the fact that I was angry and hurt at face value. Luna's returned a brush to his knee in a calming gesture.
Good.
She whispered.
Let that anger out. Let the hurt into the air. Not so that you can forgive him, but merely so that you can forgive yourself.
Elias frowned down at the alicorn. So this isn't a play to get me to play nice with him? Luna chuckled.
It could be, but no. I want to ensure that your head is clear and that you're making the most logical decisions you can. This matter, which may seem trivial, weighs on you. Why else would you flinch when we walked by the healer's tent?
Luna smiled knowingly as Elias looked away with an embarrassed frown.
Precisely. Now, let us get to the true meat of the issue, because I believe I can bring you the most closure. Then we can get dinner.
Elias' stomach rumbled in reply, causing the human to blush harder. Luna chuckled, and she hopped her forelegs onto his shoulder, gently guiding his chin so that he faced her. As soon as he was, she leaned in, gently pressing her nose against his.
Now,
she whispered,
I want you to tell me honestly. Do you truly hate Dr. Scalpel for what he did? Or is this perhaps a temporary anger that will fade with time, so that, in the future, he can offer a proper apology, and then perhaps you two can rekindle your friendship?
Elias suppressed a sigh, not wanting to spray his stinky day breath right into Luna's mouth. The restriction of the moment also gave him a moment to think, and he closed his eyes. He recognized that he was still blisteringly furious with Scalpel. The unicorn's personal betrayal was worth such anger, but hate... He searched long and hard, scanning every divided piece of his mind for something that even resembled hate. But he came up lacking. No, he didn't have hate in his heart. A great deal of anger, but not hate. He opened his eyes, meeting Luna's emerald gaze. I think that forgiveness is possible, but not for a very long time. Not immediately after the march like with everything else, but years away. I need time to forget. Luna smiled.
That's more than you're right, Elias. And I think that was very emotionally mature approach to the situation.
Are you gonna tell him I said that? Elias asked. Luna shrugged.
Perhaps, but not for a day or two, I think. He does need to stew on the fact that he hurt you a little while longer. But perhaps if I tell him the full extent of our conversation regarding his actions, that'll make him stew a little harder. We shall see.
Elias nodded understanding, then waited patiently for a moment for the alicorn to draw back. She didn't, instead smiling with him what looked like pride. She continued silently staring for one moment, then two. When the third began to pass, Elias coughed lightly and met her eyes again with no small amount of flush to his cheeks. Princess, aren't we going to go eat?
Food calls more than the presence of a princess,
She teased.
Why can I not say that I am surprised?
Elias' eyes flicked down. Isn't it tiring to stand like that?
Many a stallion would sell their souls to be in this position.
Luna replied, her smile not dimming at his repeated escape excuses.
Are you telling me that you don't like me, General?
Elias looked her up and down, and she put on a pout. Then an idea popped into mind, and he grinned at the alicorn. Oh, I like you just fine, Princess. It just took me a second to understand your new orders. Her brow furrowed in mild confusion, but she spoke with confidence.
Yes, my orders. And what were those, exactly?
To carry you back, of course. Elias said with zeal. You're tired, Princess. Of course you are. Luna blinked at him, then smiled seductively and waggled her hips.
Of course I am.
she purred.
Won't my big, strong human general carry me to the warm safety of my tent?
Elias smiled, widened at her words, and he scooped her up, doing his best to suppress his laughter as her sultry expression quickly morphed into one of panic. With how light she was, it was almost too easy to throw her over his shoulder, bracing her barrel with one hand. The alicorn wiggled and squealed in protest, drawing both of his legionaries crashing through the bushes. Both immediately froze when Elias swung in their direction, giving Luna's rump a light pat. "Evening, legionaries. Princess Luna is headed back to the castle early, but this devilish enemy decided to ambush me, so I took her prisoner." He smiled as Luna's tail flicked him in the face. "Unfortunately, being an enemy, my little prisoner is being unruly."
Elias, put me down!
Luna screeched.
This is not how you properly carry a princess!
Her hooves thudded fruitlessly against his armored back, and Elias' grin widened. "Truly lawless. Can I count on you two to help me get her back to camp?" The pair of ponies exchanged a look before the stallion smiled brightly and saluted. "Of course, General. We must secure all enemies of the princesses."
Beheading!
Luna cried out.
Vile traitor, your head will decorate my mantle!
The legionary looked to Elias, who winked back, then looked at the mayor. "And what about you, legionnaire? Are you ready to assist in this special mission for Princess Luna?" The mayor licked her lips, and then looked at the kicking alicorn rump, then back to Elias.
Well, if the princess really wants to be free. Yes, my friend,
Luna cried out.
Untold riches await you. I will give you all of Canterlot as a reward for your dutiful service.
The mayor frowned.
Oh, I'm a Manhattan mayor.
She grinned at Elias.
I guess we better get this prisoner back to camp. Traitor!
Luna screamed, increasing her desperate wiggling. With her decreased strength, however, she could do nothing but wriggle against Elias' strong arm.
Beheadings for the lot of you. I will spread the word of this day far and wide, if only so that nobody will ever double-cross me.
Elias clicked his tongue, and he, flanked by his legionaries, began walking back towards camp. Luna's ranting continued, though he could tell she didn't completely mean it. Some revenge for the act would likely occur, but he knew he could quiet the blue alicorn quite easily. "I'd quit squirming, prisoner," Elias said. "Only good prisoners get one-on-one interrogation time." Luna immediately stiffened, and a glance back found her staring at him.
Snuggles?
Elias raised an eyebrow. "Does that sound like a punishment?"
To you, perhaps, oh cruel captor?
Luna giggled. One of her legs kicked and her tail flicked him in the face again.
But then again, I have information that could confirm such dangerous rumors.
Elias patted her rump again, earning a nicker of protest. "Keep talking, prisoner, and I'll leave you alone overnight." Luna mulled silently, then asked,
Checkers?
Elias snorted but smiled. "I think that can be arranged." Taking care not to legitimately jostle her, Elias popped her off of his shoulder and let her choose a more comfortable position. Luna wrapped her hooves around his neck, then with his hand bracing her rump, she nuzzled his neck, letting out a hum of contentment.
You are a very good friend, Elias,
she whispered.
But what brought this on? I was under the impression that we were still under agreement.
"And we are," Elias replied evenly. He couldn't help but to hold her a little tighter as they walked back to camp. "But there is a very real possibility that this will be the last opportunity I have to do this." A chill raced down his spine, chased by a microdose of adrenaline. I could feel it in my blood. There's going to be a fight. Soon. Luna's grip also tightened and her eyes closed.
Promise you'll try to come back?
I can't promise such a thing. Battle is
ugly and messy, chaotic and random at the best of times.
Luna interrupted. She nuzzled his neck.
But promise me anyway, Elias. You hate breaking promises, and perhaps it'll give you the extra bit of inspiration you need.
Her eyes opened and stared into his, shining in the dark.
Now promise me.
Elias let out a small sigh, looking around the slowly lightening forest for any excuse he could to shift the conversation. Luckily, the moon poking through the trees gave him such an excuse, and Elias pointed towards the sky. How is the moon up? I thought you raised and lowered it with your magic. Luna's eyes seemed to light up as the distraction worked to perfection.
A very good question, but the answer is quite simple. The moon and sun aren't as unwieldy as one might believe, and in truth, we don't need to strictly raise and lower them each and every day. No, that tradition is merely kept to keep them on their most ideal rotational paths.
She looked up through the trees with a grin.
It would take nearly a year for them to become out of sync, and we will be back managing their alignment shortly. We made our last course corrections a day or two before we left Canterlot, and so far, I can see no major shifts.
A frown touched her face.
Though the moon is starting to spin slightly, which I rather don't like.
Elias frowned as they broke from the tree line into the manufactured clearing around the castra. Is it just me, or does the moon also seem dimmer? Luna giggled.
You have a good eye, Elias. Yes, the moon dims somewhat without my magic to fully absorb the glow of the sun, and there are also less stars in the sky. For while all the natural constellations are there, you should notice that none of my constellations are. When ponies say the night sky is my canvas, they are absolutely right. Every few months I clear out all the stars I have created and start fresh, sprucing up permanent constellations and adding a few of my own to keep the astronomers on their toes.
She smiled at him.
And while I enjoy your interest in my night sky, I still didn't hear my promise.
Elias sighed and stopped walking a few meters short of the castra. I was hoping you'd forget about that. Luna hummed and nuzzled his neck.
You are many things, my friend. Forgettable is not one. Now, do I have your word that you will try to come back?
Elias sighed, but smiled and rubbed her cheek with his thumb. He supposed there was no point in trying to fight the Alicorn, and it was just a promise after all. He always fought his hardest, and when battle with the Minotaurs came, it would be no different. If they happened to drag him down in the fight, all he had to do was take as many with him as possible. His promise would always remain intact. Elias closed his eyes and rested his forehead against Luna's, causing the Alicorn to let out a small, almost unhearable, satisfied sigh. I promise. After a short dinner, during which he and Luna played a short game of checkers, came a lengthy planning session. Elias laid out battle plans for as many situations he could think of, but knew that ultimately he would have to decide the specific game plan on the day of battle. There were simply too many variables, most of which involved terrain. Trying to decide on a concrete battle plan early was an impossible task that would only lead to a failure by inflexibility. Instead, Elias focused on general plans, laying out the best battle lines and compositions that would counteract their opponent's strengths. When the planning was concluded and the apprentices withdrew into their tent, he made his way into the open night air. Immediately, his feet began to carry him towards the forest. Before he could even make it through the main thoroughfare, though, a trio of ponies and a loveling fell and stepped beside him, steering him toward their tent with the press of their bodies. The human let out a quiet sigh as they walked. I'll have you know that I think this is a bad idea. The fact that you're out here means Snowball told you what almost happened.
He did,
Bookbinder answered.
So we're gonna try something new. After we go over the march log, of course.
Elias frowned and glanced down at the unicorn. Under equestrian law, I'm not privy to the march log until after the march is concluded. That's what makes it more impartial. Bookbinder nodded and stared up with a concerned expression in her eyes.
True, but I need to hear your account of today's events. I've already gotten everyone else of significance, and excluding your viewpoint from the log makes it partial.
Her gaze hardened.
And some of the generals could have been more understanding. I won't let history paint you in a bad light when you haven't done anything wrong.
Garland flapped his wings and let out a squawk of happiness.
Oh, but the history of it all.
He did a small twirl.
We're gonna be in the history books. Ponies are gonna be looking back through centuries and hear all about Legio 1 Equus and all of her fantastic officers.
He did another slight twirl and squawked again.
And I'm one of them.
His turn made it so that all eyes could see his stern frown, and the Pegasus shrank and chuckled slightly.
In all seriousness, and with utmost respect, of course.
Elias grunted and decided that punishing the Pegasus wasn't worth seeing his tiny crushed spirit. He really didn't want to see a face of a crying pony. Keep your cheers to a minimum, strategist, Elias said evenly. You may be excited in private, but this is still a dangerous job, and I can never emphasize enough how serious you need to take it. As the Pegasus began to droop, however, Elias bent over and scooped him up, carrying him under one arm, while using the other to scratch under his chin. The crimson Pegasus purred, doing his best to nuzzle up against Elias's armored chest. He merely frowned as his cheek rubbed against a segment of steel plate, and he scowled up to Elias. I don't like cuddling like this. That's good, Elias responded. Because we aren't cuddling. You know the rules. The bookbinder chuckled.
But didn't you say once that rules are meant to be broken?
Elias frowned at her. I have never said that in my life, and if I ever did, it was. Bad rules are meant to be broken. My rules aren't bad. In fact, I think they're quite good. Bookbinder smiled sweetly.
Okay, General Good Rules. Get in the tent so we can see if we can't get you a good night's sleep. We need to make sure you're as sharp as possible for the coming battle.
Elias frown deepened, but the argument the green unicorn made was far too convincing. If he was sloppy, he could make mistakes, and mistakes were always costly. The human blinked when he realized that he was lying on his back, barren of his armor, his arms bound to his sides with rope, and a pair of Pegasi hugging him tightly. Nightflash's muzzle snuffled away against his ribs, while Scarlet's mirrored the motion. Snowball perched himself on top of Elias's chest with a soft smile, making the lovelings seem light in comparison. Gray Granite flopped down on Elias's legs, his eyes shining with silent joy, just before they closed and he settled in. Elias glanced back the bookbinder to find her muzzle curled in a motherly smile, and she settled down on the top of his head, drawing a notebook from her saddlebags.
Now, General, why don't you tell me the events of the day from your perspective? Start from the beginning, and tell me everything you believe is important.
She chuckled and nuzzled his face.
Maybe, if you're quick, I can read you a bedtime story.
Snowball snickered, earning him a silent glare from Elias. The loveling's chuckle shifted to one of awkwardness, and looking to Bookbinder, found an unsupportive snarl. The loveling shrank and he hugged Elias's chest.
Sorry,
he whispered.
I'd quite like a story, if General Bright is up for it.
His purple eyes flicked to Elias again, and the human soared and looked up to Bookbinder. Well, we'll start at the beginning of the meeting. Lionheart stopped me before we were on the top of the hill, and... Ain't this the calm before the storm? Especially with his interactions with Luna, which I love them. I love when he can just act like a regular person, even though he is, in fact, a general and has massive PTSD. But these small moments, these are nice and cute, and I love doing them. I hope you guys agree. Who do agree on lovable moments are my wonderful Patreons. Thank you, my tier ones. Calvito, CH, Lost Nebula, Lord High, Michael McDonald, Julia Costa Peters, Nightingale, Redeemer of Dark, Nobody, Mr. Crazy Deacon, McCarrier, Pony Pony Entertainment, Jason, Hyperlink, Dreamless Portal, HKH4, Chase and Chase the Master. Bigly my tier 2s, Captain Blue Shadow, Centurion V, Max Garbanzo, Rocky 2522, Cloud Zaza, G-Man 121 Garza, Volio Cod, Weeboo, Styx Nocturne, Saint Gonk, Steel Spark, and Ringroom, Potato 20, Rihanna Dragonwolf, McKinsey, McColes, H1 Wolf King, Elemental Wolf, User 1842, DJMX 2000, Danish Dash, Sword Brother and Mordred, and Solus Eclipse. A big thank you to my previous Titan tiers, Dark Guardian, Danish Dash, Maverick, and User 1842. A big thank you to my current ones, Bis Eclipse, and Silent Titan. I appreciate your guys' support so much, and it means a ton to me. That aside, however, this has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.